Hey 7th graders, today is the day of your genetics test and the last day of our genetics unit. Remember that if you guys need a little bit more time to study, you guys can always go back and do the Jeopardy review that's in your team's assignments, and there's also 2 sets of flashcards in there as well, one for vocab and one for some extra help on monohybrid crosses. So those are both available to you, and then obviously you guys can use your notes on this test as well. So this is your genetics test. Just as a reminder to you guys, all your missing work from 3rd quarter needs to be turned in by noon on Friday. So that's the last day of this unit before we move on next week. So make sure anything you have missing that goes on 3rd quarter grade from this genetics unit is turned in complete by noon on Friday. Okay? All right, so moving on, you guys obviously found the video right here on the second slide. You are watching that right now. We are going to move into the test. So you guys will right click and open the link to this test. Should look something like this. Okay, remember that I'm going to show you guys what this test looks like, but I do have to be able to fill in answers. I'm just going to fill in some random numbers and letters so it won't even make sense. So obviously you know those aren't the right answers. And then also with multiple choice, I'm just going to mark the first answer on every question. So your guys' first little section in this out of 3 is vocabulary review. Again, remember you guys can use your notes on this, so you should have all this stuff in your OneNote. Okay, study of genes and heredity. You guys will have a big long list of vocab. Once you have used a word, you will not use it again. Okay, so kind of mentally cross it off in your brain, or you guys can write down a little word bank and cross off as you go. So your guys' options are homozygous. Remember what homo means. Gene. Phenotype, remember how we remember the pH in phenotype. Heterozygous, remember what hetero means, it's opposite of homo. Trait, dominant, genetics, genotype, think of what you guys hear when you hear genotype. Allele, and recessive, okay? Section of DNA that influences a certain trait, so it's just a little teeny tiny part of our DNA that makes a specific protein that influences a certain trait. Maybe it makes the melanin that colors our skin, okay? All the different variations for a trait represented by letters, so maybe we use a big B or a little b or a big C or a little c, basically any letter that we choose to use to represent this thing, okay? All right, a characteristic that is inherited from parents, so if we look at eye color or hairline or shape of our thumb or whether we could taste PTC or not, these are all examples of that vocab word. Okay, genotype with 2 of the same alleles, so 2 options would be either big B, or little b, little b. Those both explain this type of genotype. Genotype with 2 different alleles for the trait, so you'd have one dominant and one recessive, like big H, little h, or big A, little a. Okay. An allele that will trump all others, so if even one parent passes down, we're going to see that phenotype in the offspring. A trait that will only show if both parents pass it down, so again, both parents would have to pass down this copy of the trait. For instance, lowercase p is a non-PTC taster. So in order for an individual to be a non-PTC taster, both parents have to pass it down. If either parent passes down the PTC tasting gene, then that kid will be PTC tasting. Okay. Combination of genes or alleles represented by 2 letters. So here are 3 examples of this vocab word. Physical appearance for a trait. So maybe for eye color, you guys could see brown eyes, or blue eyes, or green eyes, or hazel eyes. Okay, those are all the options for a trait. Which genotype or genotype? So for these ones, these next 5, you guys will select all that apply. Okay, so we have 3 different genotypes written there. You're going to select all that kind of fit this description. So which genotype or genotypes represents a homozygous dominant genotype? So check all the ones that apply. You guys can check more than one if you need. Okay, select which genotypes represents a homozygous recessive. Which genotype or genotypes represent heterozygous. And which genotype or genotypes represent a genotype in which the dominant phenotype will show up. So we would see the dominant phenotype in an individual, such as brown eyes or PTC tasting. Okay, which genotypes would allow for that to happen? Okay, which genotype or genotypes represents a genotype in which the recessive phenotype shows up? So maybe a non-PTC taster. Okay, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and just check the first answer and all those so I can move on and show you the next part. Sorry, I should have done that as I was going. That was silly of me. Okay. Oh, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll do better next time. Okay, moving on to the next section. So your next section is genotypes and phenotypes. So you guys will have this table available. It might be excessive, but I put it on every question, so you guys can see it on every question. You don't have to scroll up. It's going to make your test look really long, though. All right, so the traits we're looking at for basically the rest of the test are hair on fingers. So you guys have 3 digits on a finger. You guys have the digit that has your fingernail. You guys have the digit towards the closest to the hand that has all the hair on it. But then you guys have this mid-digit, okay? Some of you guys have hair on that. Some of you guys may have a hard time seeing the hair. Maybe it's really, really fine, or you only have 1 or 2 hairs. But you either have hair on it or you don't, okay? If you guys look really carefully, you might kind of see little dots. Those are your follicles where your hair would grow out of, but maybe you don't see a massive amount of hair coming out. Some people have really hairy knuckles, okay? So when I talk about mid-digit hair, I'm talking about hair on that middle digit in between the fingernail and the base, okay? PTC tasting, most of you guys should know, all you guys A-B cohort should know whether you can taste PTC or not. But DLI, you guys should at least know what this is from our beginning of the unit. Dimples, whether you smile and you have little dimples in your cheeks. Handedness, left or right-handed. And earlobe attachment, whether you have free earlobes that dip down or attached that kind of just go straight into your head. All right, so the question is, the first couple questions are going to ask you, all right, here's my genotype, big M, little m. What's my phenotype? Use the chart here, okay? You guys, this is going to be unlike vocab where you may have multiple answers for that. So check which one applies. Okay, genotype, big T, again, there's only one answer on these. What's the phenotype? Genotype, big E, little e, what's the phenotype? Genotype, little h, what's the phenotype? Genotype, little d, what's the phenotype? And then for these ones, you guys are given the phenotype and asked to tell me the genotype or genotypes. Okay, so for these, you guys should be able to check more than one answer. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys go through those on your own. Okay, and then next section, oops, I did it again, you guys. This one's not as bad, though. Oops, I'm just going to check that one, that one, that one, that one. Oh, you guys, I'm sorry. All right, last but not least, you guys have, I believe, 4 monohybrid crosses to do. There's 4 monohybrid crosses, but there's multiple questions for each, or for some. Okay, so a man heterozygous for free earlobes marries a woman with attached earlobes. What is the probability that kids will have attached earlobes? So for these, notice that there isn't a place for you guys to draw or to really show your work or to do a Punnett square. So feel free to grab a piece of notebook paper to do this. And then don't forget to kind of work through those steps. I'm not asking you guys to answer each of these steps for credit on the test. I'm just basically asking you the final question. So remember that steps that you guys can work through are what is the trait? What is the dominant allele? So make a little key. What does the big M stand for? What does the little m stand for? What's your recessive allele? What's your mom's genotypes? Dad's genotypes? And then you guys can fill out a Punnett square on that piece of notebook paper. I don't need the piece of notebook paper or anything like that. Okay, so you guys will see that's your thing. And then the question that asks you is, what is the probability that kids will have attached earlobes? So you guys can just check one of the percentages there. Okay, looking at mid-digital hair for this one, a man heterozygous for mid-digital hair falls in love with a lovely lady who is also heterozygous for mid-digital hair. What is the probability they have a child with mid-digital hair? So again, do your problem, solve your Punnett square, and then check which one of these percentages applies. Okay, this is the same setup as 27, so if you guys did the Punnett square for this one, you just have to basically answer this question. What is the probability they have a child who is homozygous recessive? Okay, so you're looking at the exact same problem, just a different question to interpret. Okay, new question. A homozygous dominant PTC tasting woman marries a man who is heterozygous, and he's a PTC taster. What is the genotypic ratio? So I gave you guys 4 different ratios. Choose which one applies to your guys' problem. Okay, same with this one. So if you guys are looking at dimples, you guys are doing phenotypic ratio. So which one applies? And then a right-handed couple, both of which are heterozygous, fall in love and want to have kids. What is the probability their first child will be left-handed? So same thing to your problem. And question 32, which is your last question, is the exact same setup, exact same problem, just a different question. What is the probability their kids will have the same genotypes as the parents? Okay, so do your percentage there. When you get done, make sure you guys hit submit and go back into your assignment here, make sure you turn this in, but most importantly, you guys need to make sure you submit it in the Google form or the Microsoft form. Okay, I hope you all are having a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.